We've never actually met, but it's such an honor to have him on. He's the host of Going Underground, and I'm sure you are a fan of it as well. Just incredible journalism, and just has never wavered despite all of the attacks, all of the censorship that we've seen on against media over the past many years by the West, and just steadfast, excellent journalism. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in Afshin Ratanzi. 1 second. There we go. Hello.
Hey, Lee. Amazing to meet you finally. After obviously, likewise, watching your show all those years when, there was always different types of subtle attacks until finally the coup de grace, luckily, not literally, took us out both of us out.
Yes, and luckily Going Underground continues, just not on Western airwaves, I guess.
That's right. We sailed to a distributor, had to leave the country because there's just no way you can cover the main event, because whatever's happening in Latin America or Africa and Southeast Asia, the main event is in Europe, and you're not allowed to cover it fairly. So what's a journalist supposed to do? Stay there and keep quiet about the biggest news in the world, or get the hell out and try to report as best you can from any country that will take you.
You were in London, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm born in Cambridge in England, worked in London at the BBC and all these things, and it's my home. And I just had to, sell the belongings, leave the flat. Some tabloid newspapers were already trying to case my flat, and the London Daily Mail was had broken into the stairway of my apartment block and so on. So just, it was like a matter of days or weeks, and we realized just get the hell out. So it was the safest thing to do.
Because in the United States, I've been suppressed and censored in a million ways online, but so far, fingers crossed, I haven't feared arrest. But
you have the First Amendment. You would be fine. Look what happened to, Gary Webb is still here to tell this story.
Right. Gary Webb, or
no, that's look
at Stephen Donziger, locked up for 3 years in the United States. But in the UK, they've passed some things that sound like you could be arrested for doing broadcasting.
That's correct. Because the unusual thing here, I mean, Britain routinely bans television stations, because unlike the United States with its First Amendment, Britain has a censorship agency. I know you have the FCC there, but the censorship agency is much more active in Britain and routinely censors information, on television. Because anyway, to watch television in Britain, anyway, you have to buy a license and subsidize the BBC just because you own a TV and are watching broadcasts.
Right.
On top of that, there's a censorship agency appointed by the government which checks that what you're saying is not showing too much political dissent. But even so, when they banned Venezuela's TV, Chinese TV, Iranian TV, I don't know how many TV channels they banned to stop the fragile minds of Britain being infected by other ideas from other parts of the world. They were allowed to still produce television programs for them. But when it came to Russia, and my production company sold programs to RT, when it came to making programs which went on RT, and I think now they have widened it because they saw this as a precedent, they said anyone who goes on TV, I think if you look at a statutory instrument, which doesn't have to be passed by Parliament, popped on the internet by the British government, it's on the Foreign Office website, that says, we've got to prevent people from saying there are any Nazis in Ukraine. Any Nazis in Ukraine. I mean, there are Nazis in the USA and the UK, but no, Ukraine, you must never say anything about Nazis there. And then also on top of that, you mustn't be able to produce television programs or any connections with RT's channels and I suppose linked channels as well. So it was there that's the difference. In the United States, you can still produce stuff for RT. It's just they are making it difficult for them to, rent studios and things like that in a sort of McCarthy vein.
You've been a journalist for a long time. Did you ever think you'd see it get this bad in the UK?
That's a really, really good question, because obviously it's got bad, because Julian Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy. We know from leaks now from the CIA back bugging of the Ecuadorian embassy that the British government were involved in rehearsals for machine gun assassinations at London airports. So behind the scenes, clearly this was there, and they have imprisoned journalists for the past 40 years, and whistleblowers and so on, one after another. But I suppose I just didn't think it would affect me, because I directly have not been, I was involved in the David Kelly affair over the WMD Iraq war story, working at the BBC. But all that happened to people who worked for that television program was the Director General of the BBC, twice this has happened in my lifetime, was fired, Greg Dyke, and I went from that program because of the association. I mean, we were on the program that spoke to David Kelly shortly before his reported suicide, the government scientist who said there was no WMD. Now, that's what you would expect they would do. They either fire you, they suppress you, they don't give you jobs, they, you find it difficult to work. It's not like just doing journalism is an imprisonable offense. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, and even your friend Seymour Hersh, who you've had on many times, and he obviously just put out several months ago the bombshell about the U.S. taking up the Nord Stream pipeline. One of the top reporters the U.S. has ever produced, and now he's writing mainly on Substack, and he's not allowed even to do interviews on mainstream media.
He's not a friend. It's probably dangerous to be a friend of Seymour Hersh. He's an acquaintance. I've known him for quite a few years.
Sorry
he sends me lovely notes saying, we've been around the block, us two together. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm much younger than you, and I was nothing to do with your Watergate stories and the massacre stories, or even the Abu Ghraib scandal revelations, or actually he scooped so many people, it's too many to mention. The idea that I suppose, the interesting thing, he's so sanguine about it. It's like, yeah, so I do a Substack because I can't do this, so I do that. Younger people are not like that. We're going to go, wait a minute, you should be on the front page of your old newspaper. I suppose there's behind it a little bit of upset, I detect, in the fact that he can't get stories placed where he did for so long at the New York Times. But he, to all intents and purposes, just appears as, look, I'm just continuing what I want to do. I don't get any of this rubbish from corporations that do the advertising in the papers telling me this and that, let alone the US State Department telling me what to do. The irony here, by the way, is I think Seymour Hersh, if you read his autobiography, only took up political and foreign affairs reporting because he realized that the kind of reporting that, say, I don't know, Ralph Nader is associated with, I know he's an activist, is much tougher because you're actually doing consumer journalism. And if you start to attack, I have good friends that do it. It's the toughest job. But if you start talking about, even food, if you're the grain in your bread is somehow amiss, or types of electronic hardware, or your vacuum cleaner, that's the dangerous stuff, because the corporations will knock you out because they're so powerful. That's why he got into foreign affairs reporting. And now, of course, ironically, foreign affairs reporting seems to be arguably the toughest type of journalism in the world, and toughest thing to satirize in the world.
Well, thank you. I do my best. While I have you, talk a little about, you've done such great reporting on the proxy war in Ukraine. Where do you see it headed now? A lot of even U.S. government officials seem to be slowly giving the signals that they're ready for this thing to end.
Well, of course, we don't know, because, from the fact that Seymour, they're still denied, of course, the Biden administration, that the CIA blew up Europe's energy pipelines, which must have killed, if it's true, countless people in Europe during the winter, because excess deaths were up in the winter, let alone how many people are going to die. This is just ordinary families, men, women, and children freezing to death, because I know over there you have 41.4 million who can't survive today without federal aid to eat. But in Britain and the rest of Europe, there has to be masses of federal aid to be able to have people heating homes. And there's so much evidence now that after Nord Stream, that's got worse. So given that the Biden administration was able to do that, how can we definitely say, despite the signs that you imply that appear to be the case, how far they want to go, how existential to the Biden administration and to Joe Biden himself is this proxy war? So I think it's more difficult to predict. And of course, that's the scary thing for the global South, for Vladimir Putin, for Xi Jinping, everyone else on Earth, and all of us, because we expect we're fighting a rational actor. And from the Biden administration, clearly everything they seem to do is to oddly diminish U.S. power. Get Russia and China closer together. Hurt Europe, their closest continent, with impoverishment, allow Latin America to, for the first time, show some freedom, and parts of Africa. Everything they're doing is against the US interest. And then on the other hand, are they really that greedy for contracts previously signed as implied by all this Hunter Biden stuff that they would risk anything for a few more $1 billion?
Boy, the way you're talking about how terrible he is for the U.S. empire, maybe I need to start voting for Biden. But
peace is breaking out. I'm speaking to you from Dubai. I have to thank Joe Biden, perhaps, that this is, I came out here and I was thinking, I've interviewed Assad of Syria during the war. That's a problem because Syria and the GCC countries do not get on. I arrive here 6 months later, presumably because Antony Blinken and his other West exec contractor people in the State Department have taken their eye off the ball. Peace breaks out between Syria and the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And then Saudi Arabia and Iran, representing that Shia and Sunni split and schism of Islam, they make friends. And everywhere, peace seems to be breaking out. Joe Biden, he's the man, except Europe.
And you've been covering, connected to this is, of course, BRICS, the rise of BRICS. You've been covering that a lot. Talk about the importance of that, the importance of this rift in the global economies. But dollar is not going to be king soon.
Yeah, but can we trust them? President Lula, he's been on our show just after he got out of jail. And there he was talking about Julian Assange, talking about how it was a U.S. coup, basically, that overthrew him, democratically elected president of Brazil. And now, a few months ago, he was smiling with Joe Biden. India just signed a 5-year weapons deal with the Pentagon. I wonder. I think China and Russia seem to show, and maybe that's the important alliance, and arguably Saudi Arabia, because the oil is priced in dollars, and if that changes, right, every BRICS country will have to follow. So Saudi is very important in the GCC countries here where I am. So it's on. We mustn't forget that empires struggle to remain empires and can cause complete havoc. I mean, look at just the other day was Pakistan-India Independence Day, and partition of India followed or proceeded just as they were becoming independent. Pakistan and India, millions of people killed, wounded, or injured. Who knows what a dying empire like Washington's will do to prevent BRICS coming together? What sort of force, what sort of assassinations, what sort of proxy forces and proxy guerrilla forces? If the United States is able to support Al-Qaeda and ISIS and to overthrow Assad of Syria for strategic aims, to support the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, which would morph into what happened on 9/11, what are they going to do to stop BRICS? They don't care about blowback.
It is a cornered tiger, and it's scary to think what they might do, putting us on the brink of nuclear war, just to be one thing. But I don't want to keep you much longer. I know it's very late there, but it is really an honor to speak to you, and hopefully we can.
When are you on TV again? Because RT, CGTN, every channel that is banned in Europe is out here in the Arab world, just on the main channel. So I got to move to Dubai. So, well, clearly. You should be working for Saudi Arabia TV. That's what you should be doing. What the irony? all that propaganda, and this is the free world.
Yeah.
It's gonna be scary to see what the United States does to countries that allow people like Lee Camp on television.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, and be well, and hope to talk soon.
Thank you.